Can I
Yes,
have
ma'am,
one
it's
acknowledge?
visible.
Okay, fine, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon, all of you. As Gaurav was telling, I'll be talking about fourth and fifth module actually, not the first module. I hope it is already covered by the previous people who did this, previous professors who have done CG, some modules they have done, I think. So maybe in the first three modules, you have learned some of the basics of OpenGL, some of the algorithms in computer graphics, like Presenham, or maybe it is midpoint circle drawing algorithm, or it may be some clipping algorithms. So like some of the algorithms you might have studied in first three modules along with some transformations. You know the transformations are very important in computer graphics so that we can have some animations, rotations, translations, scaling effects in the scenes what we have constructed. So that is what the first three modules in computer graphics. I don't know how much it is covered or not. If you want the details about this, anyhow, my YouTube channel, you can get the details about that. The first three modules and related PPT and notes is also available. So you can mail me with this ID. I'll be providing at the end of the session. So if anything help required, I will be happy to help that. So let me start with the fourth and the fifth module today in the 2 hour session, what I'll be having. So maybe not in detail about every topic I can go because of the time limit. As I told already, you can go visit my YouTube channel so that you can get in detail videos about each topic in that channel. So let me start with the fourth module. You have some topics called as 3D viewing because you might have already studied about transformations as I told 2D and 3D transformations is already there in your second and third module. So about transformations you might have studied, but with respect to 3D, there is some viewing difference here, something difference here with other than the 2D. So the 3D viewing concepts, orthogonal projections, orthogonal projections, perspective, I'll talk about the differences anyhow. Then some of the OpenGL functions which support 3D and then the visible surface detection algorithms. Visible surface detection algorithms are nothing but how to hide the surfaces or the faces which are not in point of our view or which are away from our point of view, which are in the back of a 3D object. Those surfaces, you need not display that. So something related to the visible surface detection method also, you have some topics in fourth module. Okay, the first of all, let me start with the 3D viewing parameters. So 3D viewing parameters in the sense there will be some parameters which are required, or I would like to tell that we need to set up some 3D viewing parameters so that it help our design of the system. So that 3D viewing parameters will be discussed here in the slide here. The first thing what is required in 3D before we construct any 3D scene or before we construct some 3D objects on the computer graphics OpenGL using OpenGL, what is required is we need a viewpoint. Or I would like to tell that from where are you viewing? Which is the eye position, camera position, or which is the position you set up your camera. Because based on the position of your camera or where you are standing, your effect or the visibility of your surface depends. That is how much I can cover with my eyes, how much till what distance I can see. So that all things, then how much area I can cover. There will be some area which you can cover it as. So all that depends on where are you standing, where have you set up your camera. So that is required here. We call that as the viewing position here. So here, as of now, our viewing position will tell it is P naught. Here, we as of now will designate with that name called as P naught. That is, we are standing at the origin. The camera in OpenGL system, the camera in OpenGL graphics system is at the origin. It is. So that is why we tell it as P naught is nothing but 000, or we could tell it X naught, Y naught, Z naught. So this we call it as the camera position or the eye position. Next thing, what you call it as view plane normal vector. So normal, you understand, I think for any surface, a vector which is perpendicular or a line which is perpendicular. For example, see here this surface. A surface And any line which is perpendicular to this surface, you call it as a normal vector. A vector which is vector is nothing but an array of points, we can tell. So any vector which is perpendicular to this view plane, you call it as normal vector. So normal vectors are very important because they tell in which view you are seeing it. Normal vectors, again, the previous one what I told you, from where are you looking? And the normal vectors tells on which axis you are looking. So that is a normal vector here, and usually normal vector will be along Z view axis. Z view axis in the sense you are looking around the Z axis it is. So that we call it as normal vector in here, because based on all these parameters only, your future topics, whatever I told, the perspective, parallel projections, all those things, they are based on these terms only. So that's what I told you require. From where are you standing? I am looking on which axis? I am looking on the Z view axis. So that is this normal vector. And these are the planes actually what I should, this is your normal vector now, but usually in OpenGL, as I told, it will be usually around Z axis. So this is your Z axis now. This is the X axis and here is the Y axis here. Okay, that's what I told. On the Z axis, we will be looking along the Z axis only. Negative Z axis, it will be looking up. Okay. Then one more thing is, after all these things, we require something called as one more vector called as view up vector. So you understood what is view ref, that is from where are you looking, the eye position, camera position, you understood. What is a normal vector, you understood. Normal vector is nothing but any vector which is perpendicular to the view plane. And view plane will be some axis, xy axis if view plane is there. XY plane, I call it as a view plane. So which is the vector perpendicular to the view plane now? Z axis. So that is I am looking on the Z axis. My axis is view axis is Z axis. And something is also called as view up vector. What is this view up vector? It will be always in a thumbs up direction. The meaning it is, how do you tilt up your camera? That is depending on how you tilt your head. For example, if you tilt your head to your left or you tilt your head to your right. So depending on that, your view or your scene will depend, or how you are looking, or how will be the objects perceived by you. They will depend on how are you tilting your head. So the tilting of the camera, we call it as view up vector. Always it will be in a positive Y direction. That is a thumbs up direction, what I told you. So view up vector will always be 0, 1, 0. In the sense, in the positive Y axis, it will be looking to. So these are the three things what you should understand: camera position, normal vector, and view up vector. Now, for all these things, we'll go to the transformations now, projection transformations. Now, what do you mean by a projection? Because in 3D, we don't have any devices to display this 3D object. Suppose if I have a ball, sphere, if I have, or maybe if I have some cone-shaped object, pyramid object, so which are all 3D, I cannot display those type of 3D objects on my 2D output devices. So then we need to calculate the projections of this. That is, the 3D object has to be transformed to a 2D on the screen it is. So for that we require projections. And whatever the graphics packages you have, whether it is OpenGL or any graphics packages, they support both parallel and perspective projections. What do you mean by parallel and perspective? I'll anyhow come to the. Okay, and I hope you understood what you mean by projections. Our 3D objects, I cannot place those 3D objects onto a 2D screen with 2D output devices. So that is why we require projection. Now, what do you mean by parallel projection? There are two types of projections, parallel and perspective. Parallel projection, the objects. So So what do you mean by parallel projection? The object coordinates or the object will be transformed to the view plane. View plane is nothing but a 2D device, what I told. So they will be transformed to the view plane by some parallel lines. That is, by writing the parallel lines, I transform the 3D object onto the 2D screen or the 2D view plane. So what is the example of that? This is the example as I told. See, these two are the parallel lines here. This is an object. As of now, it is a line. Let us consider this as a 3D object. So it is transformed or it is projected onto, this is a 2D plane or our some output device. Maybe let us call it as a screen, the computer screen it is. So the 3D object is transformed to the 2D screen on parallel lines. These two lines are parallel it is. So this we call it as parallel projection it is. And again under parallel projections, there are two types, oblique and orthogonal projections. That we'll see it in the further slides. But understand the difference between parallel and perspective projection first. Parallel projection, what I told, the vertices or the endpoints of the objects, coordinates of the objects are transformed along the parallel lines. That is parallel projection. Perspective projection, what it does, here it will be projected or it will be transformed to the view plane along lines, they converge. See, in the previous one, what happened? It was on parallel lines it is. Now what is happening? They get transformed to the view plane so that somewhere they get converged here. This is a convergence point. And this is where the point we have captured that transformed points. So this we call it as the 2D line that which has been converted from 3D to 2D. So this is an example of perspective projection. Actually, perspective projection is the way our human eye sees, is the way our camera sees. That is, and I move the camera closer to the object, the size will be increased. When I move the camera away from the object, the size of the object decreases. I hope I'll repeat it. As I move the camera closer to the object, the size of the object increases. As I take back the camera away from the object, the size of the object decreases. So this is how our normal eye sees, our camera sees it is. And perspective projections are the way not realistic. They are more realistic because this is the way our human eye sees this. But actually the relative proportion, that is, see here the size of the object and here the size of the object it is. That's what it is told. The relative proportion of objects will not be maintained. But here what happened? The relative proportion is maintained here. So the line was at this much length. Here also it is this much. So that's the difference between perspective and parallel projection. In perspective, what I told, the relative proportion of objects will not be maintained. But anyhow, this is the way our normal human eye sees. So these two are the type of projections what we have. And what is the meaning of projection you understood? Convert a 3D object to some 2D on the screen. Now let us see the first type now. Under parallel projections, you have two types as I told, orthogonal and oblique projections. Out of that, I am now going for orthogonal projections. Orthogonal projections are nothing but the projection lines are parallel as I told here. But all these projection lines will be perpendicular to the view plane it is. Let me show you an example. Remember this. Parallel projections, the projecting lines will be parallel, definitely. But these projecting lines will be perpendicular to the view plane. Let me show you with a diagram, you will understand, I think. Then where are these type of projection used? These type of projections are normally used in, like for example, when you want to construct, when you have an architect and we tell them to construct the top view, side view, the front view of a house or something, elevations, what we call the architect. So this is where these orthogonal projections will come into picture. See here now, if I consider this as a view plane here, the projection, this is an object, actual 3D object it is. And if I ask the projection lines here, they are all parallel. The projection lines are parallel, plus they are perpendicular to this view plane. This is the view plane on the side view. This is the view plane on the top. This is the view plane on the front. So all the lines are perpendicular to this view plane. So then we call this type of projections as orthogonal projections. Parallel projections, definitely they should be parallel. In addition to being parallel, these lines, when they are perpendicular to a view plane, this is a view plane. View plane can be set up in any direction. Here it is in side view, here it is set up on top, here it is set up in the front. Now when they are perpendicular to the view plane, then we call that type of projections as orthogonal projections. hope you understood the difference, orthogonal. Now, in the 2D, I hope you might have studied in your 2D that you might have some view plane, view volume. Because GLU ortho 2D is a function in OpenGL which is to set up a view volume, we call it, clipping window, we call it. That is, clipping window is nothing but whatever objects falls on the clipping window, within the clipping window, I'll retain that. Rest all objects, I'll delete it. That you call it as a clipping window. So window is with respect to 2D. Now what should be in 3D? Here also we should have something called as view volume. There it was clip window. Here we call it as clip view volume, or we'll also call it as view volume. That's all it is. That is whatever fits within the view volume, I'll retain it. Other objects, I'll truncate it. Now how will be the view plane in parallel projection? It will be in the shape of a parallelepiped. I hope you understood that. Before in 2D what happened, whatever falls within the clipping window, I'll retain it. Rest all we will eliminate it. Now as it is 3D, I should have a view volume here. Now whatever falls within this box, parallelepiped, I'll retain it and I'll project it onto the clipping window, or I'll project it. Projection is later. When you want to display it on the output screen, then we have projection. But here it is the view volume. That is how many ever objects falls within this view volume, will retain it. Whichever objects are outside of the view volume, we will truncate it. Now, one more in addition to this view volume. So this is a view volume for orthogonal projection in the shape of a parallelepiped. In addition to this, something you have called as far plane and near plane. That is, we place some, some boundaries or some cards in between the view plane. If this is your view volume, to this view volume, I place some cards, that is near card and far card. Whichever objects are near to this view card, whichever objects are near to this near plane, they will be shown little bit larger. Objects which are there near the far plane will be shorter in size. That is, whichever falls within this range, I'll capture it. That is what we have the view volume for orthogonal projections it is. Next thing, the perspective projections, I told you, I think the projected lines will be converging at one point. So this converging point, there is a name to that called as projection reference point. See here, two lines are there here, which are projected around along the converging lines to the view plane here. And see here now, both the objects are of same size. The two lines which are there here, I'll consider them as 3D objects now. Both the objects are of same size it is. But see here, as the object moves closer to the view plane, the size will be large. As the object is away from the far near view plane, it is smaller it is. That's what I told. Perspective projection is the way in our normal human eye sees or the camera sees. So as I move the object closer to the view plane, the size increases. As I move the object away from the view plane, the size of the object decreases it is. This is a perspective projection. This we call it as projection reference point or view PRP. This is the view plane it is. All these terms are clear to you. These are all the formulas behind that. Then see here, that's what I told you. The projection reference point, as I move, when I'm nearer to the projection reference point, it is the size will be larger. As I move away from the projection reference point, it will be, the size will be larger. It is, we look at, it will be larger here. The size of the object will be very smaller here. And then if it is very far, the projection reference point is very far from the view plane, then something, it will almost matches to the parallel projection only. I'll repeat it here what is happening. Projection reference point and the clipping window, they are very nearby. Then the size of the object will be larger. Here the size of the object will be a little bit smaller, and here it almost matches the parallel projection here. Now something we also called as vanishing points in perspective projection. Perspective projection, you understood, I think. Here something we have called as vanishing points. What do you mean by vanishing points? All these projected lines, they appear to converge at one line it is. For example, let me show you an example. See here now. there will be some lines in the scene. Any parallel lines in the scene that are not parallel to the view plane are projected into converging lines it is. So this point, in the point in which they converge, we call it as a vanishing point. Understand the definition of this vanishing point? There will be some parallel lines in the scene. There will be some parallel lines in the scene which are parallel to the view plane. They will be projected as parallel lines only. The lines which are parallel to the view plane, they will be projected as parallel lines only. But they are not parallel to the view plane. They will be converging. See here now. Suppose it is, if this axis, if I consider, I'll consider these lines here. I'm not able to draw. So these lines which are there here, they are not parallel to the view plane. But these lines here, they are parallel to the view plane. For example, if I consider the XY plane in the sense, the plane in the XY direction, that is this type. Okay, if I consider some object in the XY plane, so these lines are parallel to Y-axis, these lines are parallel to X-axis it is. But the other lines which are there here, they are not parallel to the XY plane. So they converge to one point here somewhere. This we call it as a vanishing point. And this type of object or this type of view plane, if we have, they are not parallel to X-axis, they are not parallel to Z-axis. So when they are not parallel to two axes, then we have something called as two vanishing points. Here it is one vanishing point, here it is two vanishing points. I hope it is clear what I'm telling. The lines which are parallel to XY plane will be projected as parallel lines only. That is, as it is, it will be transformed. When it is getting projected, these lines will be transformed as it is. This parallel line as it is, this parallel line also as it is. But these other lines which are there of the object, which are not parallel, they will be projected onto the view plane as some converging point. That is this topic what we are discussing. So this type of objects and this type of view plane, they are not parallel to X-axis, neither they are parallel to Z-axis. Only they are parallel on Y-axis like this. So then they have two vanishing points, or the object tend to vanish to a single point along two axes. The object stretch or tend to be converging along 2 points. That is, we have two vanishing points. The object is getting converged here also and here also, Z and X. Now we understood in parallel projection, the view volume will be in the shape of a parallelepiped. What will be the view volume in type of perspective projections? The view volume will be in the shape of a pyramid. Whatever objects falls within the pyramid, we will retain it. Whatever objects falls outside the pyramid, we will eliminate them. I hope you are following about view volumeters. What will be my area of interest? Whichever are within this interest, area of interest, I'll keep it. With our outside, we will eliminate it. So here in perspective projection, the view volume will be in the shape of a pyramid. And see here, the view plane where we can keep it, we can anywhere place the view volume, sorry, view plane it is. That we call it as a clipping window. So if I pass it here, the view plane, the projection reference point is here. You understood what is projection reference point? The lines from the object get converged here to this projection reference point. And this is the plane, view plane, where we capture the objects onto the 2D screen. And here also we have near and far clipping planes. That is, objects which are here nearer, they will be projected as larger. Objects which are here near the far clipping plane will be projected as smaller objects. So this you call it as frustum. This pyramid shape view volume what we are having in OpenGL or in graphics, it is called as frustum view volume or pyramid view volume, it is called as. And then you have again in type of frustum, you have two types of frustum, symmetric frustum and oblique frustum. So this is an oblique frustum. This is an example of a symmetric frustum. Symmetric frustum you understood, I think, the pyramid shape view volume for perspective projection. So what is the symmetric frustum? It is nothing but both the sides of the view volume will be same. It is symmetric it is. If I draw a center line here, both the sides will be similar here. Or I would like to tell that the center line of this frustum is perpendicular to the view plane. Here will be a view plane. So the center line of frustum is perpendicular to the view plane. Then we call it a symmetric frustum, or in the other way, both the half of the frustum will be same. But here, the center line, whatever we pass it, it is not perpendicular to the view plane. Or both the halves of the pyramid, they are not same. So then we call it as oblique frustum. So our view volume in in perspective projection can either be in the shape of a pyramid, then that pyramid can be shape of symmetric frustum or oblique frustum. Okay, let us, after all these things, what I told, 3D viewing parameters I told you, like view up vector, thumbs up, normal vector, perpendicular to view plane, and from where are you looking, where are the lines converging to, PRP, projection reference point. And after that, you understood about types of projections, parallel, perspective, and in parallel, orthogonal, in perspective, two types of frustum I told you. With all these things, now we want to study about the OpenGL functions which support all these parallel perspective projections. Now, before you do any projections or transformations, you know that you should set up a model view matrix for OpenGL. Because this matrix helps us to describe the world coordinates to or transform the world coordinates to viewing coordinates. World coordinates is the one in which our objects are laid out, and viewing coordinates are something related to the viewing system it is. So the matrix has to be there because everything in graphics, you know that it is matrix multiplication, matrix concatenation only. Whatever our objects are getting displayed, they get concatenated, they get multiplied with the matrix. So everything in computer graphics is through matrices only. I hope you are familiar with this. Now, before we start our projections or transformations, I need a matrix in place in memory so that my future objects will get concatenated or multiplied to the current matrix. So that matrix, we call it as model view matrix. Now, this is the function to set up which matrix mode you want it. We need to set up some function so that all these points, whatever I told, lookup vector, normal vector, everything we have to set up. So which is the function in OpenGL for that? GLU lookup is a function with 9 parameters. Viewing parameters, whatever I told you in the beginning, they all will be initialized with this following GLU function. And you know the syntax in OpenGL, I think. The lookup is the name of a function. This lookup is the function is from GLU library. There are 3 libraries in OpenGL, you know, I think GL, GLU, and GLUT. So the prefix tells you the function belongs to which library. So lookup is the function which belongs to GLU library. And why we use this lookup function? When we want to set up the 3D viewing parameters, what I told you in the beginning. And is it, you may ask that, is it this function compulsory? No, this is not compulsory. Even if you don't use this, it will be set up to the default parameters. OpenGL has already set up some default parameters, so they will be taken up for calculations. So what are all the 9 points here? The first 3 points are telling from where are you looking. That's what I told you, the camera position or the eye position. Where are you standing? Where is the camera? Is it at this 0, 0, x0, y0, and z0? And x reference is the to where you are looking to, or the reference vector, what I told you, the PRP, what I told you, the reference position, to where are you looking to. So that we call it as x reference point. And these three are the view up vector, the tilt position of your head, what I told you, the thumbs up. So these are the 3 types of parameters which are there here. I am standing at the origin. I am looking at to some reference point, the which axis you are looking, and how is your head tilted? How is your camera tilted? So these are all the 3 types of parameters within lookup function. Let me show you a sample for that. This is a sample. That is, if you don't, I told that GLU lookup function is not compulsory to use in your graphics programs. If you don't use it, it will be set up to this default. But using this explicitly, you can change whatever you want the values. But if you don't use, this will be the default parameters. That is, the camera is set up at the origin. We are looking, I told you that normal vector is required. On which axis you are looking? I am looking on negative z axis. This is the default. the viewer is looking or the camera is looking on negative z axis and the camera is tilted in a positive or in positive y axis or thumbs up direction. The head is tilted in a negative positive y direction. So these are the samples for what I told you for this lookat function. Then if you want to set up your view volume, orthogonal view volume, you have to change your projection matrix. Till now it was model view matrix because all our objects, constructions, everything happens in model view. Transformations, object constructions, everything happens in model view matrix. Once you start with the projections, you want to apply projections, then we want to change your matrix mode to projection matrix. So we can do this by this function called as GL underscore projection. So before it was model view, here all our object coordinates, world coordinates, and maybe some transformations, everything will be done in model view matrix. Now we have to change it to projection matrix. Then if you want to set up a view volume, it is 3D view volume, what I told you, it is through GL ortho. And this is the parallelepiped view volume or the view volume for a parallel projection. So what are all the parameters for that? If a window is there, because for a parallelepiped here, let me draw it. For example, if this is the window or the parallelepiped, the rectangular box, we want some x minimum, y minimum here, and this position we call it as x max, y max, because we refer with these points only. So what is the x minimum and y minimum? This is the x minimum and y minimum. And what is the x max and y minimum? Because rectangle will be referred by that only. And what is the distance of near plane and what is the distance of the far plane? That is in a parallelepiped. If it is like this, where should I place the near plane? Where should I place the far plane it is? So that we call it as near plane and far plane. So with this, we set up a 3D viewing volume, which is in the shape of a parallelepiped. So this will be the view volume in the shape with the size of 1. And these are the equivalent for that. Then if you want to set up that is for the setting up of a parallel projection view volume. If you want to set up a view volume for symmetric projection, you know that it's the frustum. And the symmetric, actually, I told you that symmetric, like both the sides are same it is. So if you want to set up a symmetric frustum, this is the function. GLU perspective. Any angle in the range of 0 to 180 can be assigned. What is the aspect ratio in the sense? Aspect ratio in the sense, whatever original, for example, length to height ratio, whatever I have of an object, it should be same on the display device also, on the output device also. That is length to height of, for example, 3 to 6 is there. Similarly, when it is compressed, that same ratio has to be maintained on the screen also. For example, length to height 3 is to 6, I told 1 is to 2, it is ratio. So then when I transform it onto the 2D view plane, the same ratio has to be maintained. So that is this aspect ratio it is. And theta is the angle which we tell it as the angle between top and bottom clipping planes. Because in a pyramid, I told that there will be a top clipping plane and the bottom clipping plane. So what is the angle between these two clipping planes? That is the theta here. And this is the distance, as I told, between near and far clipping planes. So this is a function, GLU perspective is a function which is used to set up a symmetric frustum. There is another frustum, another OpenGL function here for creating the frustum. This can be either used for, it's like a general view volume it is, for perspective projection. This you can either use it for symmetric frustum or you can use it for oblique frustum. But this function is only for symmetric frustum, particularly for symmetric. And this GL frustum, what you have, you can either use it for symmetric frustum or for oblique frustum. I hope you can remember these terms, what I'm telling, symmetric and oblique. So this is a general function. This is the function with respect to the symmetric frustum only. The next one I have come here, a visible surface detection method. So we all learned about projections, everything now. So in a 3D, definitely we cannot see all the coordinates of a 3D object. For example, here, when I draw, Suppose if you draw a cube something like this, there will be some surfaces or some points which will be hidden from our view. Like this, if 3D cube, if I draw, let us draw it. So there will be some objects which are away from our view. See, I'll be able to see only the front face here. So the surfaces which are away from our, or if I am not able to see, even in a sphere, when you have a ball or something sphere, you cannot see all the faces of a sphere. At one time, when you go on rotating, you can see all the faces. So definitely 3D, this is a problem here. So you cannot see all the faces of a 3D object. So when that is the case, why we need to waste time, memory and computation in calculating the surfaces which are away from our point of view or which are not visible in the front. So this is an algorithm or approach what we are discussing. Removal of the surfaces which are not visible. So that this is the concept, visible surface detection methods. I hope this is clear, I think. Determining what is visible within a scene from a chosen viewing position, from the position where you are standing. How much ever is visible to you, you capture only those. Rest all, you delete it, eliminate it. So that is this approach what we are talking about, visible surface detection methods. And this is also called as hidden surface, some of the time it is. The visible surface detection methods, or we call it as hidden surface removal, because it is nothing but, as I told, removing the hidden surfaces which are not at our viewpoint. This sometimes it is called as hidden surface removal, visible surface or hidden surface. Now there are two approaches under this algorithm. It can either be object based or it can be pixel based or image based it is. So under this type of algorithm, there are two types actually, as I told, object based and image based. Object based, what they will do, they will start eliminating by surface. If they just see that if the front face is not visible, if the hand is visible, truncate that full hand only. If they feel that if the top some ball is not visible, remove that ball. So like this, depending on the surfaces, they try to remove the objects surfaces. This is called as object based removal. Image based approach, what will happen, they start evaluating pixel by pixel. Even in maybe in a triangle, when I draw, for example, if we draw a tetrahedron like this, something like this surface may not be visible for us. So in object based method, what will happen? The entire surface will be removed, object based. But in pixel based or image based, what happens? It starts deciding pixel by pixel. Even in this face, if this pixel is visible, you draw that. But if this pixel is not visible, if it is hidden, eliminate it. So decisions will be taken on pixel by pixel basis. So that is called as image based approaches, and the other one what I told is object based approaches. So there are two algorithms under each section. This back face detection, what we are writing it here, it's an example of object space method. That is, the back faces whichever are there, they will be removed. It is. That's what face by face. I'm talking about face, FACE. That face by face, the object's faces will be deleted. So this is an example of object space method. So how do you decide that? You decide based on this formula. So any formula which satisfies this, if the point XYZ is less than the 0, then we consider that surface as a back face and we eliminate the whole surface itself. And what are this ABCD? They're nothing but the plane parameters of the polygon. You know that for a polygon, we have some plane parameters. So that is this ABCD. And if you come to know that for a point XYZ, if this equation is satisfied or evaluates to less than 0, we eliminate that whole surface only. This is the back face detection method. Or other way you can check whether it is back face or not by using this view vector. You know that view is a view up vector. It is in the play in the what I told, the position in how your camera is tilted. So this is the view up vector, view here. not view up vector, the view vector. Where are you seeing, on which axis you are looking at? So that is this V view here. So that into dot product of the normal vector if it evaluates to 0. And what is normal vector? Any vector which is perpendicular to the surface. So this is the surface what we are interested in. So any surface perpendicular, sorry, any vector which is perpendicular to this surface, we call it as normal vector. So if the dot product of these two vectors evaluates greater than to 0, then also we can decide that it's a back face. I'll repeat it. V view is the axis on which you are looking. Normal vector is a vector which is perpendicular to the surface here, the face here. So if the dot product of these two becomes greater than 0, the meaning it's a back face. So this is about object-based method. That is, we conclude that the entire face is not required. We are not evaluating by pixel here. We are concluding maybe this part of the image is visible. But what we do, we conclude it as a wholesale and we remove this entire face itself. That is object-based method. But this image-based method, what is an example? Depth buffer method is an example. So image-based method. Depth buffer algorithm is an example it is. So that's what I told you. Each pixel position will be calculated, whether it is visible or it is hidden, and then it will be processed. Not like a wholesale decision, what I told you. If one point evaluates to be greater than 0, we conclude that whole face is not visible. But here it is, the pixel by pixel decision will be carried out. So this is an example here. If this is the view plane and there are three surfaces here back to back. So this is the front surface, back, middle, and the three faces are there. Now, how do we decide that? How do we decide that each pixel is visible or not? It is. There is an example here. Whichever is visible, there is some algorithm for that. I'll show you that. Then I'll come back to this diagram. But before we carry out this algorithm, which is there in the next slide here, you remember that there are two buffer areas which are required. I hope in the beginning of this computer graphics, we might have already understood in the graphics, there will be two types of buffer, color buffer and the depth buffer. When we take depth buffer, whenever we have 3D objects, what is depth information? Again, it is the distance from the view position to the object position. That is, how much is the distance from where I'm looking to the object position. The depth information, we call it as that the depth information will be stored in the depth buffer. The color information will be stored in the frame buffer. So to carry out this algorithm, you require two buffers here. Depth buffer, it is used to store the depth values as I told. The depth is nothing but the distance between the viewing position and the object position. That you call it as depth it is. That is how far it is from the viewing position. And one more frame buffer as I told, it stores the color information. So initially the frame buffer, the color buffer will be set to the background color of the scene. That is whatever you set up your background color, the frame buffer buffer is nothing but it is a memory of some 10 into 10 or something it is. So frame buffer, color buffer will be initialized. All the pixels there in that, values in that will be set to the background color values. And then all the contents in the frame buffer will be set to 1.0. This 1.0 we call it as maximum depth and the least is 0.00 minimum depth. What is the algorithm? How does it learn? How does it run? So as I told, two buffers are required here. Depth buffer, all the content sets to 1.0. Frame buffer, all the content sets to the background color. Now, what will be the procedure here in this algorithm? You have to process each polygon in the scene. For example, if I have a cube with 6 faces, each time I have to take one face, one polygon. So then within each face, this is see here, it is within this third, second point only repeating. So within each polygon, I have to take each pixel. and then check about these two things. I hope you're understanding what I'm telling. So if a polygon is having 6 faces, each face you have to take, and in each face, each pixel you have to decide. Then you have to take the depth of that particular pixel. If it is less than the depth buffer value, there will be some buffer here. Let me take the values like this. Some buffer, I'm just writing it randomly. So initially, let me take here, it is all set to 1.0, I told. So when I took the first pixel of the polygon, the depth information of the pixel on a particular face, on a particular polygon, maybe it is 0.3. Isn't it? It is 0.3. Now what we do, that Z information is less than the depth information in the frame buffer. Definitely that condition is satisfied. So what we do, that we remove this content and place this 0.3 here. So here for particular pixel here, we remove this one and we place that 0.3 here. And then what we do for a particular, for example, if this we are talking about one polygon here. So here, whatever depth were there, 0.3, I stored it into this pixel. And whatever color was there here, that will be stored into the surface web buffer. So there will be two buffers here. I hope you're following it. So here, what was the here? It was background color. Now you understood that the depth is very less here. So that depth information, I stored it here. And whatever the foreground color of this pixel, so that is this pixel is of which color, that color will be stored in the frame buffer color, which was already background color. Then I stored it to some red color or something because that was the pixel color. So like this, it will be going on running for all the faces, all the pixels of the polygon. And finally, the contents of frame buffer and contents of color buffer will be displayed. That is, contents of depth buffer is nothing but whichever has the least depth information. In the sense, which are nearer least depth when we have, which are visible from our point of view, they will have least depth. Which are all the pixels having maximum depth value away from our view plane, they will not be captured. So this is how the depth buffer algorithm runs for all the pixels of all the objects. You understand here, this is one face of a polygon. This is the depth buffer. This is the frame buffer, color buffer. What will be the default contents here? All one. What will be the default contents here? All background color. Now you take pixel by pixel and face by face, polygon by polygon. Take the first pixel, check what is the depth information. So these are all of same size. Whatever 3 tables I have written, they are all of same size. That is, if this is 10 cross 10, this also should be 10 cross 10 and 10 cross 10. So you check the depth information here. If it is less than the value here, replace this value here. Suppose, and then you, whatever the color of this pixel is there. If it is red, then change it to here. So like this, it will be continued for all the pixels, all the faces of the polygon. Then this is about visible surface detection method, or I told you it is called as hidden surface removal, removing the surfaces which are hidden from our point of view. Then I understood that there are two approaches for this: object-based approach, image-based approach. Object-based approach, it starts eliminating by face or surface by surface, wholesale detection it is. The image-based approach works pixel by pixel, I do depth buffer algorithm. Now, what is the support in OpenGL for this visible surface detection? Now, this is the function for that, enable. And you know that in OpenGL, whatever functions you have to enable, whatever parameters you have to enable, it should be done with this GL enable function only. Then You have to tell this constant. You know that in OpenGL, all constants are written with capital letters. And this is a constant from GL library because it is GL underscore cull underscore face. And so what is that you are telling? We are telling the OpenGL to enable the back surface removal or hidden surface removal. So we are telling the OpenGL to activate this, enable this. Then what is the mode? You should tell with this GL cullface mode. What should be the values for this mode? It can either be GL black front and back. That is, we are telling the OpenGL to enable depth buffer algorithm, or we are telling the OpenGL to enable hidden surface removal. Then we should also tell what is the mode. That is whether you want to remove the front surface, whether you want to remove the back surface, or you want to remove both front and back. You might be surprised what is remaining if you remove the front and back faces. So this will be the condition when you want the wireframe model. Wireframe model is nothing but everything in terms of lines it is. So this is the function to enable back surface, hidden surface removal and which mode it is. Back, front or both back and front. And you can turn off that routine by using GL disable. Until now we were with the single buffer, and this depth information also should be included in the display mode, telling that we should also consider the depth information when you are displaying some objects. So this, you know, the display mode where this function comes, it comes in the main function of your main program. And this is a function to clear all the depth buffer information, because there will be some depth buffers I told. Whatever previous values are there of previous programs which are stored, they should be all cleared and it should be set to the one value, maximum one value by default. So once you call this routine, all the depth pixels value in that depth buffer will be set to 1.0. So here you are telling display mode, you consider the depth information. Here you are telling the depth buffer should be cleared and all set to 1.0. And here you are telling to activate the routines, the algorithms. Then something you have called as queuing in, depth queuing in OpenGL or in graphics. That is, I don't have a photo to show that. What do you mean by depth queuing? Something like this I would like to draw. So some object, if I consider like this, something like this. So the pixels which are, for example, I'm looking at here, the center point I'm looking at. So whichever objects are very clear to me, they will be with high intensity. Whichever pixels are away from me, their intensity will be very less. So this you call it as some fog effect or queuing effect, what we call it as. I hope this diagram you understood. I think what this photo I have, sorry, some scribbling I've done. This is the point where I can see clearly. This is the point where I cannot see so clearly. It is so dim it is. So these pixels will be highlighted with more intensity. These pixels will have very least intensity. So this type of fog effect, if you want to construct in OpenGL, it is through this function called as fog eye. Now, before that, as I told you, you have to enable that function. So it is by GL enable fog effect. Fog effect, it is clear, I think. Some pixels with high intensity, some pixels with least intensity. That is, the farther pixels will have least intensity, the nearby pixels will have high intensity. So that fog effect, if you want to create it, this is by using this GL fog eye function. I is a integer parameter. It can either be f also here as it is set. Then if you want to enable that attribute, it is through GL enable GL fog, which is the mode you want to set up and whether it is linear or quadratic it is. Okay, this is about the fourth module, I think. Can I have any questions here? Because I will be starting with the fifth module now. Fourth module, whatever we discussed was about main things about 3D viewing parameters. Very important those topics are. Most frequently asked question in your VTU question papers. then about types of projections, perspective and parallel, and their associated view volume and some OpenGL functions. And then I took about visible surface detection methods, some OpenGL functions, and two algorithms under that, backface algorithm, depth buffer algorithm. So these are all the main topics in the fourth module. Before I start with the fifth module, I don't know whether, is it possible to take up the questions now? I don't know. Okay, let me start with the fifth module then. So the main topics in fifth module are input devices, logical devices, display list, something with respect to menus, and then curved objects and curved surfaces. Input devices, I am not taking up the topic because it's already covered in your first module. First module, when we were talking about output devices and input devices, we had the input devices there. That is, which are all the devices where we can capture the input from. For example, mouse, it is keyboard, trackball, spaceball, touchpad, touch panels, that all we call it as input devices. But in addition to that, we also have some logical devices. So what you mean by logical devices is nothing but the way they give the input to the graphics applications. That you call it as logical devices. That is, they illustrate the variety of input forms, in what way they can be given it to the applications, graphics applications. So there are 6 types of logical devices, what I told: string, locator, pick, choice, valuator, and stroke. String is nothing but this, you call it as a way in which the string inputs, ASCII strings, are given to the user program. So for example, it is keyboard. Whenever you type it, what will be given from the keyboard is a logical input, we call it. That's ASCII string, which is given to the user program or the graphical applications. So that we call it as string. And normally it is implemented through keyboard only, this logical device. Locator is nothing but it provides a position. For example, I wanted to get the position. It is, you either move your mouse or trackball or spaceball, anything. So whatever returns from that pointing device, mouse, trackball, or spaceball, then you call it as a locator. What does it get? What does it give to the application program? It gives the location. Then pick is nothing but when you want to identify an object. For example, each object will be given some ID. So then if you want to get the ID of that particular object, then you have pick logical device. So string, you understood, I think it is implemented through keyboard. Locator is, these are all the logical names, that's all, to our physical input devices. Pick, again, it is, we want to pick up some object, it is. Choice, again, it is normally through what I would like to tell, menus. For example, menu options, you have so many, you have like 1, 2, 3 options will be there. You have options for quit, you have option for continue. So that choice can be made either through menus, slide bars, or graphical buttons. Valuators actually are not there in old graphic systems where boxes or dials were there. These are the valuators, not so commonly used because they provide analog input to the user program or the application. Stroke is nothing but it returns an array of locations. Instead of one location, the multiple points where we click. So that array of locations will be given by this stroke. So these are all the logical devices. Again, it is one of the important question in your VTU. Okay, let me go to the menus now. Now, how to create menus in OpenGL. So this is an what snapshot of how actually menus will look. So there are two options in the menu: quit and resize. And in resize, again, you have for increase and decrease. So if this type of things you want it in OpenGL, it is possible through menus what you have. Now, how to create a menu, and after you create a menu, you have to either attach it to one of the button of the mouse. Menu, I showed you the output it is. So when this menu, it is a pop-up, something like a pop-up. So when this menu will be popped up, when you attach this menu to some button on the mouse, that is whenever you click the left or the right button on your mouse, this menu will be popped up on the display window. Now how to attach that? It is by this function in OpenGL called as getAttachMenu. So whether you click the right button of the mouse or the left button of the mouse, the menus will be popped up on the display window. This is very important. After you create a menus, you have to attach it to the mouse button. Then how to create a menu is by this function getCreateMenu. So how to create a menu, you understood? I think it is through getCreateMenu. And this is the function which should be called it as a callback function. So this is a callback function which will be called whenever you click any button on the menu or menu option you click it on. So this function will be called when you click on the menu. So how to create a menu in OpenGL is through getCreateMenu. And once this is successful, creation is successful, an ID identifier will be returned to you. Then how to add the menu entries? It is through this add menu entry OpenGL function. What should be the parameters? What should be your display string? Clear screen. This is a menu. The output of this code is the screen. So what should be the display name here? Clear screen. And then it is an identifier for this clear screen. Understanding, I think, how do you create a menu? By through getCreateMenu. And this is a function which will be called whenever you click or anything operation you do on this menu. This is a callback function registered. And once this create is successful, an ID will be returned for that. Then how to add the members to that menu? It is through getAdd menu entry. This is the display name, clear screen. And for this clear screen, an identifier one is there. One more entry exit identifier for that is that. And as I told, after creating the entry, you have to attach it to the button. I'm attaching it to the glut right button in the sense. This is a constant actually. You are attaching the menu to the right button of the mouse. So this is how you create menus in OpenGL. Through create menu, you create, and how many other entries you want, you can add menu entry function. Here as of now only 2 entries are there, but you can still expand your menu how many other entries you want it. Then some of the options has a sub menu you might have seen, I think, in the previous one what I showed you. Here, see here, this is a sub menu. This is the main menu, quit and resize. And when you click on resize, this will come. So if these type of submenus can also be created by using submenu entry. Add submenu. Instead of add menu entry, it should be through add submenu. And already you have created a menu here. That menu should be added here, submenu. In add menu entry when you do, it will be a main entry in the menu. Add submenu when you do, so that will be attached as submenu to the main menu. So whatever menu you have already created, that will be added as submenu to one main entry called as RGB menu. So this is how you create submenus in OpenGL. And there is some concept called, see, these are all the important questions. I have picked up the topics. Still so many topics are there in 5th module. I have picked up only the topics whichever are most repeatedly and most important in fifth module. So there is one more concept in OpenGL or graphics called as display list. What is this concept of display list? You know that graphics calculations are very time consumed. They are compute intensive and time taken it is. So when your graphics objects or scene is having so many complications, so many complex objects, complex scenes, if it is having, and it is getting repeated again and again. In my first scene, I had some 10 3D objects. Again, these same 10 3D objects is getting repeated in the third scene also, third frame also. Then why do you want to again and again compute this, calculate it? So when something is getting repeatedly coming in your frames, you can store all these calculations in a concept called as a display list. That is, once a display list is created, they are evaluated, the pixel data are evaluated and they are stored in the memory. It is one-time process, as I told, and I can reuse it repeatedly without re-evaluating on each frame. So when this will come into picture, when you have so many 3D objects repeatedly coming into your scene. So that time I can make use of display objects, because instead of every time creating it and wasting time for computation displaying, create it once, store it in the memory, compile and store it in the memory. Whenever you want, just take it. So this is something used to reduce the CPU cycles. That is what the display list concept is. And how to create a display list, I'll show you an example, this one. So this function will create a gen list function will create a display list for you. And how many lists you want to create it? One. And then what is an identifier for that? It is an integer index. And this is what the new list which is getting created. And that list should be GL underscore compile. You can either have GL underscore compile or GL underscore compile and execute. That is, whether you want to store this code, whether you want to store it using only compile or compile and execute both. So based on that, you can change this option. So I told you GL gen list will create a display list for you. How many? One I want. This is an identifier for that, some integer. And this is used to create a new list, which should be compiled, that's all. And what is that you want to put it in GL display list? Triangles function. GL underscore triangle is a primitive which is used to create a triangle, you know that. And triangle 3 vertices are there, which is provided through V0, V1 and V2. And again, V0 is a vector actually where XYZ will be stored. Here also XYZ will be stored. Here also XYZ. So that is, it is a 3D, it is 3D triangle or a tetrahedron. So that will be stored here. Now, how do you call that list? Wherever you want in your further lines of OpenGL function, if you just tell GL call list and the index of that, the display list will be created here, or it will be again constructed here, or it will be applied here. You understood? I think you create a start initializing a display list. It is an identifier that new list I am creating, which should be compiled and stored in the memory. And this is what the code I want to compile. As of now, it is very simple, I know, but I'm talking about the conditions where you have so many 3D objects in your scene repeatedly coming. Then in further lines of your code, whenever you want this display object, you just use it by using GL call list and that index of the display list identifier which was stored here. So this is the concept of display list. Remember that when do we use that? I told you in the beginning only, when you have so many 3D objects in your graphics project, which keeps repeatedly coming in frames continuously and they are all repeated. Then we should use display list. Okay, coming to the curved surfaces. OpenGL also, in addition to this polygons, whatever we studied till now, polygon, triangle, all those projections, everything, curved surfaces are also supported in OpenGL. What are all the examples of curved surfaces? These are all the examples. Something like sphere you have, ellipsoid. These type of curved objects is very difficult in OpenGL to construct, but then also there is support in OpenGL for construction of all this quadric surfaces. Under curved surfaces, again, Curved can be anything. It can be quadric, it can be ellipsoid. Sorry, let me talk here. Curved surfaces can be anything. It can be quadric, polynomial, exponential, or spline. That is depending on the polynomial function. If the polynomial function is to the power of 2, those type of surfaces I call it as quadratic. That is quadratic equation to the power of 2. And more than that, we call it as polynomial. That is any surface which has polynomial equation greater than 4 or 5 or exponential like this. But these are all very difficult to construct because as the degree of polynomial increases, complexity increases, construction will become very difficult and it will take more time for calculation that. So which is very common in OpenGL and graphics are quadric surfaces or the surfaces which have their polynomial power raised to the power of 2. So under quadric, what all you have? Sphere, ellipsoid, torus, hyperboloid, parabola like that. So this is a parabola. These type of quadratic surfaces you have. Let me show you now how to create a sphere. This is a sphere it is. So there is support in OpenGL to construct sphere. What is the formula for sphere? X square plus y square plus z square is equal to r square. That is any point on the sphere will satisfy this equation, or I can write it in a parametric equation form. Parametric is nothing but when we have the equation in terms of some angles. So this is the formula for an ellipsoid. This is an ellipsoid. For this also support is there. So for all these surfaces, remember that the polynomial equation will be in the power of 2. Here you understood, I think it is in the power of 2, quadratic it is. That is why we called all this as quadric surfaces. And see here also it is 2, quadric surface, ellipsoid. And this is a torus. Torus is nothing but this is a torus. And see here also the equation, the polynomial equation. This is an equation. How you got this equation? Again, a lot of theory is there behind this that I'm not going into in detail. Just I'm showing you the formula polynomial equation for torus. And again, you can see, I think it is in the power of 2. So power of 2 means they are nothing but quadratic equation. So they are nothing but quadratic surfaces. So which are all the examples I told you? Sphere, ellipsoid, torus. This is a torus example. Now, what are the functions in OpenGL we have to support that? So you can either construct that sphere using glut wire sphere or glut solid sphere. What is the difference for that? This is a solid sphere and this is a wire sphere. This you call it a solid model, wireframe model. That is, the entire object get filled with a solid color. That entire object get filled with lines it is. Then how many lines you want? It is given here. What is r? The radius of the sphere is r. How many lines you want longitudinally? That is like this. These are longitudes, the vertical ones, and how many horizontal one you want, that you call it as a latitude. So this is about longitudes and latitudes here in sphere. So sphere can be either constructed using wireframe model or solid model, and these two are under GLUT library of OpenGL. What are all the parameters you understood? I think radius, how many vertical lines you want, how many horizontal lines you want. This is an example of that. And how do we construct a cone in OpenGL? The same thing, wireframe cone or the solid cone. What are all the parameters of that? For a cone, what is the radius? See here, this is the radius. For a cone base, it is a circle. So there should be some radius to the circle base. So that is this R base. What is the height of the cone? And again, how many longitudes you want? How many vertical lines you want? How many horizontal lines you want? This is an example of wireframe cone, and this is an example of solid cone. And if you want to construct a torus, either using glut wire torus or glut solid torus, these are the examples of that. Solid torus it is and wire torus it is. So for all these things, the OpenGL glut library has the support to create this type of built-in object. Even a teapot is also there. That I'm not taking it. Glut to solid teapot, glut to wire teapot you have. That is teapot object is one object where the curved surfaces is maximal used because there are so many curves within a teapot it is. So to some types, because all these surfaces are difficult in construction, they have already been constructed, compiled and stored you. Thus with a function call, you can create a teapot. Otherwise, it is very difficult to create teapot with so many curves and curved surfaces. So even sphere, torus, ellipsoid, whatever I showed you, it is very difficult to construct without these built-in functions. So they've already been stored and compiled as a single function call. You can use it then. Now coming to the last topic here is splines. Splines are nothing but where you can draw a curve-like object in OpenGL because you know that OpenGL or graphics, you don't have any built-in functions like primitives what we had for polygon, triangles, rect or something. All those are where like straight lines, linear equations, but these will become polynomial equations, very difficult to construct. So when you want to construct some curve-based objects, then we can make use of this. So these are all an example of spline. So what's the definition of a spline? It is nothing but to produce a smooth curve. Smooth curve to some designated set of points. That you call it as a spline. See here, there will be some designated set of points. So through that, if I draw a smooth curve, that I call it as a spline. Got the definition of spline, I think. It is used to produce a smooth curve to the designated set of points like this. Now, the more the number of points, you will get a smoother curve. See, instead of these many number of points here, if I would have reduced to 4 or 5, you would have not got such a smoother curve here. So what's the meaning here, conclusion here? If you have more number of points, the smoother your curve will become because curve is again nothing but approximation through straight lines. So more the number of points, you get a smoother curve. Then there is one concept in your syllabus called as Bezier curve, which is a type of spline curve only. Spline, you understood it is nothing but drawing a smooth curve through designated set of points. Under the same concept, you have some concept of Bezier curve because this is a curve function or a curve equation which was developed by one person, French engineer called as Bezier only. When he was working on automobile bodies, automobile designs, when he was working out, he found out this formula. So based on his formula only, which is a quadratic only it is. So based on this formula only, the Bezier curve has been designed. But not only this Bezier curve, there are other type of spline curves like B-spline, so many other type of splines are there. Out of that, for your syllabus, it is called as Bezier curve. Then how do you create a Bezier curve? As I told, one thing is required, how many control points you want it. So there is a lot of theory behind that. I'm not going through this. See, for example, this is an equation for that Bezier curve. Bezier curve is having one mathematical equation. That is what the equation here. Let me show you the how actually it looks, how Bezier curve, how it will be constructed like this. So what is required to construct a Bezier curve or any spline? You require some designated set of points you require. So this is how points are given. So if 3 points are given, the curve will be drawn like this. Then you might ask that why didn't the curve go here till here to the tip of P1? So that will be decided by one parameter u, what you take it in the formula. See here. So u, one parameter what we take in the range of 0 to 1. Once I apply to this formula, it gives me some set of curve points here. So depending on u, whether it should be extended only here or it should be extended till here, that will be decided. But just remember that the curve, whatever you're drawing, it will be within this surface only, within this polygon only. And this is the Bezier curve generated out of 4 control points. And suppose if I draw P1 and P2 both here, that is if I give the weightage to this control point and P1 and P2, this curve tends to be dragged here. And see here again the 4 control points but drawn in another way, it is drawn like this. This is also 4 control points. This is also I think 3, 4, 5 control points. So depending on where are you placing the control points, remember this 2 points I'll tell you. depending on how are you placing the control points, and the parameter u decides what is the shape of your curve, Bezier curve. So what is the mathematical formula behind that? It is this. Points will be XYZ points will be generated. XYZ points for each point on the curve here. See, each point on the curve should have XYZ parameters, XYZ values. So how do you get XYZ values for each point? It is by this applying this equation like this. What is n here? How many number of control points? What is u here? As I told, one parameter in the range of 0 to 1, which decides how the curve should fit. So that is this equation. So based on this equation only, Bezier curve function will be calculated. See here, how does it start here actually? If this is the control points given and they are placed like this, as I told, you can place it in any direction, any way it is. So as of now, it is placed like this. So you start from here. So once you start from here, a line has to be drawn between the two intersecting lines. So this is the line from P0 to P2. This is the line from P1 to P3. So once the tangent is drawn here, you have this, you will decide how this curve should take the deviation, whether it should go till here or it should cut off here. And again, at some particular point here, a tangent is taken, and that line, whatever you're drawing, it connects the two curves here. So so here it is getting drawn like this. See here. Once you start here, you should bend and then it will go. How this will be decided? Depending on the tangents what you draw, the line what you draw, connecting. See here, on this point I have one line, on this curve I have one line. So a tangent is drawn here, and whatever we are drawing, it should be touching the tangent like this. This is how Bezier curves are drawn. And as I told, if 2 points, if this is the Bezier curve generated out of 5 control points. Out of 5 control points, if I give 2 control points to one same position, then the curve will be dragged like this. That is, it will be dragged towards this. And out of 5 control points, if I have 2 control points, the starting and ending are at same position, then you have a circular curve. Here, more weightage is given to one position, so it tends to drag like this here. And as I told, the most common Bezier curves are the cubic Bezier curves. Bezier curve can be of any exponent. It can be 3, 4, 5, anything. Again, I told you, when the power becomes more than 2, 3 something, more than 2, 3, it is very difficult to calculate all these formulas, polynomials, because more computation, more time it is. Now, which are all the most common type of Bezier curves are nothing but cubic Bezier curve. Cubic Bezier curve are nothing but which have 4 control points, and the polynomial degree will be 3. Because what will be the polynomial degree will be nothing but number of control points minus 1. I hope it is clear. The polynomial degree of a Bezier curve will be nothing but number of control points minus 1. So when you have 4 control points, what will be the polynomial degree? It will be 4 minus 1, 3. So I can call it as it is cubic Bezier curve. And these are all the formulas. See here, the maximum exponent is here is 3. So then you call it as a cubic Bezier curve. So this is the formula for a cubic Bezier curve. How will be each XYZ will be decided? P is a XYZ. It contains all. So this is the formula for a cubic Bezier curve. So you observe the degree, I think it is to the power of 3, to the power of 2, 2 and 1 and 0. So the same thing, if it is written in a matrix form, is this cubic Bezier curve formula. You understood what is spline? It is nothing but curves written through some set of control points. That is a spline, you understood. And curved surfaces can be of any polynomial, but major thing I told you, they are quadric surfaces. And quadric surfaces, initially I showed you some built-in functions what you have. Then I talked about Bezier curve. Bezier curve is nothing but a polynomial. It can be of any degree. It was designed by one Polish mathematician when he was working on Renault automobiles. But Bezier curves can be of any polynomial I told, but majority usage of Bezier curve is in cubic Bezier curve. In the sense, I have 4 control points and the exponential degree is to the power of 3. That you call it as cubic Bezier curve. So cubic Bezier curve mathematical formula is this, and the same thing written as a matrix is this. That's all it is. So this is all about fourth and fifth module. I showed you the example of Bezier curves here. These are all the examples. So this is a cubic Bezier curve, 4 control points. This is also an example of cubic Bezier curve. So number of control points will be 4, degree will be 3. I hope this is clear. That's all I had for today. Fourth and fifth module I have covered, I think. And that too I would like to tell, these are all just the basic what I have covered. If you want to in detail about that.
Okay, if the students have any questions, you can unmute yourselves and ask. We'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes. I think we don't have any questions.
Okay,
So
fine.
on behalf of IEEE Bangalore section, we thank Vani ma'am for delivering such a wonderful lecture. And I hope that the students will make use of it for their exam preparations. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.